This is a Swede Speaks. Hi, today I'm here with the Anti-Caliph of Uppsala.
Yes, formerly known as Mohammed Omar,
Exactly.
now Eddie.
Yes, it's a pleasure to finally get to have you in this channel.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes. So there are a few things I would like to know, and maybe our viewers would like to know too. So I think the big question I would like to ask you first is, why did you leave Islam?
You know, I was born here in Uppsala,
Yes.
in Sweden. Uppsala is famous for the university,
Yes.
one of the oldest universities in Europe.
And the church.
And the church, it's the archdiocese, I think it's called in English.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
My English is not that good, so you have to excuse me.
I think we can manage.
As I was born here in Uppsala, I grew up with my mother who was a Christian,
Yes.
not very devout, and with my stepfather who was a nominal Muslim,
Right.
you know, very secular.
Yes. He wasn't really practicing.
He wasn't practicing, no. But then when I became a teenager, you know, I sort of started to... because I knew that my biological father was Iranian.
Yes.
So I wanted to know more about my heritage.
Exactly.
And it was also, I wasn't very good at school. I dropped out of school.
Right.
So I didn't have any place, sort of, which I could feel this is my...
So you were looking for an identity?
I was looking for an identity, for a purpose, a community, a sense of community or meaning. So I sort of, you know, started to do research and read about Iranian culture, about Islam. And then I went to the mosque.
Yes.
And when I went to the mosque, I found people who sort of, you know, took me on.
Right.
They were brotherly, sort of, you know, they took me in, do this, don't do that. And I had a very liberal upbringing.
Yes.
I didn't have too many, you know, do's and don'ts.
Right. It's typical Swedish.
Typical Swedish. Very, very typical. I mean, my mother is 40-talist.
Yes, she's born. She's a baby boomer.
A baby boom, yeah.
Yes.
That's what they say in America.
Yes.
Yeah, so very, you know, those are the, you know, the 60s generation, 68 generation,
Yes.
you say in Sweden.
Exactly.
Generation of 68, maybe.
Yes.
And so that was sort of, you know, comforting to me, that at last I found people who sort of, you know, I felt that they cared about me. They sort of wanted to guide me.
Right.
So I found a, you know, spiritual home.
Yes.
Among the Muslims. I had my doubts, of course, because I was, you know, I was Swedish, I was Western, so I had a skeptic mind.
Mm.
But I sort of, you know, accepted what they told me, because I gained more.
Right.
I wanted that social, you know, feeling of
Yes.
belonging.
You wanted the boundaries they would set for you.
Exactly. Then I had my intellectual, you know, my doubts.
Yes.
As a Western person, you know.
Yes.
Is this really true? Is this really, you know, reasonable? You know, but I sort of, you know, I didn't listen to that voice. I sort of followed the flow. But then I was, you know, I wasn't really into Islam at that time. When I really got into Islam was when I got married.
Right.
I got married to a Muslim woman, so I started a family, a Muslim family.
Yes.
I got kids. Then I sort of, you know, got into the routine of daily life as a Muslim.
Yes.
And that was 99.
Mm.
And then I was a Muslim until 2011, something like that.
Yes.
When I can't really remember the exact date, because it was a process.
Yes.
The last few years as a Muslim, I sort of, you know, I was struggling.
Mm.
I had a very strong, you know, nostalgia for Swedish culture.
Right.
So you know, at Christmas time, I used to go to church, I used to sing hymns, you know, listen to our Christmas
You're really
hymns.
not supposed to do that if you are practicing Muslim.
No, that's, you know, out of the question. You know, Christmas is banned.
Yes.
In Islam. We don't have Christmas, and, you know, it's haram.
Exactly.
It's a sin.
Yes, it's forbidden.
It's forbidden. So when I was a Muslim, when I had my Muslim family, I sort of, you know, I became more and more, you know, my heart started more and more, you know, to you know, the love of my Swedish culture sort of, you know, started to flourish.
Right.
More and more, and I wanted, you know, especially at Christmas time, I had this longing.
Yes. I think Christmas is probably the biggest. Well, it's the biggest celebration in Sweden, probably.
Yeah, and you know, because I was a Muslim for so many years, so I sort of became, how do you say, in exile. I was living in Sweden, but I was in exile.
Yes,
I was like
Yes.
I was like a foreigner in my own country.
Yes.
I felt, disconnected.
Yes.
From my own culture, so that's why I had this longing. So when I heard those Christmas hymns, for example, famous traditional Swedish hymns,
Yes.
I felt very sentimental.
Right.
And but for most Swedes that it means nothing. It's sort of it's just something you have.
Yes.
You don't need.
We don't think about it. Not that way.
No, we don't think about it. I didn't think about it when I was a kid.
No.
It was just something that we had in the background.
Yes.
But then when I sort of became disconnected, when I was in that Muslim.
In sort of a Muslim bubble or something like that.
In that Muslim bubble, I started. I heard them afresh. It was like new to me. I started to hear the words. What were they singing? When I was a kid, I didn't even know what we were singing.
No.
We were singing, Saint Lucy,
Yeah,
or
Saint
the
Lucy.
Star of Bethlehem.
Yes.
Victor Rydberg.
Yes.
And Holy Night.
Yes.
Stilla natt. I think Helga natt. Oh, Helga natt.
Yes.
We have Stilla natt as well.
I think that's Silent Night.
Silent Night, yeah. And Staffan var en stalledräng. Those Stephen was a stable boy.
Yeah, I don't think they have that one in English actually.
No.
I think
Stephen is very famous in Sweden.
Yeah.
But we don't know who he is, but we sing about it.
That's Stephen the first. That's the first martyr.
Yeah, exactly.
But most Swedes don't know that.
No, I mean, when we hear Stephen was a stable boy, I think we associate something very Swedish.
Yes.
We think of somebody, Stephen, at the countryside in Sweden or something,
Yes.
taking care of the horses.
Yes. We think of some servant boy at some farm.
At some farm, exactly. We don't think about,
Persecution
Jerusalem.
or no, nothing like that.
No, exactly. But that's another story.
Yes.
But anyway, I started, to recognize the words and, became... And then, I think I was special as well because I wasn't really an ordinary Muslim because I was Swedish.
Yes.
So I was a convert, even though my biological father was a Muslim.
Yes.
So I was still a convert, sort of, I was viewed as a convert
Right.
by the Muslim community.
Yes.
And I didn't really have a Muslim family around me, like mother and father.
Exactly.
So if you're born a Muslim, it's much more difficult to get out.
Yes.
Because you have this pressure from your family. I didn't really have that. So I had this, and I could compare, the Islamic lifestyle with my Swedish childhood and upbringing, teenage years, and
Yes.
and all that. And then also I wasn't really a mainstream Muslim because I was always, a reading, studying,
Yes.
reflecting person.
Yes, you were into Sufism.
I was into Sufism as well. So I always wanted to explore. I was curious
Yes.
to expand the boundaries. And I was an intellectual, I was an editor of a magazine
Exactly.
called Minaret. So because I was an intellectual, I had to deal with all these questions.
Yes.
People ask me questions, why are you a Muslim? What about women's rights? What about stoning? What about this? What about that? So people ask me questions. If you're just an ordinary guy, Muhammad,
Yes, you
in
don't really.
the kebab shop, you don't get questions.
No.
You just live your life as a Muslim. Nobody
Yes.
expects you to be able to answer anything.
No, they don't think you're an intellectual or,
No.
or a theologian or something like that.
Exactly. So nobody will ask you, what do you mean with? What about? They know that you're just born a Muslim.
Yes.
You're not responsible, really.
No.
It's just like
You might not
it's an
even-
accident.
Yeah, you might not even know why you're celebrating this.
Exactly. So, but because I was considered to be a convert and I was also an intellectual, so I got many hard questions.
Right.
I was sort of in a position where I had to defend Islam.
Yes.
I was an apologetic,
Yes.
so to speak.
Yes.
So I was put in that position also by the Muslims. The Muslims expected me, because I was a Swedish native speaker, I was an
Yes.
intellectual, so they sort of expected me to defend
Yes.
Islam. So
Yeah.
they put me in the front, defend Islam, tell them
Exactly.
how great Islam is, answer their questions. So when I got all these questions and I started to research and I tried to answer them, I discovered that I couldn't answer them. That the criticism was really, rimlig.
Oh, reasonable.
It was reasonable. I mean,
Yes.
the criticisms were correct.
Yes.
So I discovered that I couldn't really defend Islam. My consciousness wouldn't allow it because it wouldn't be true.
Right. For instance, you couldn't defend killing the apostates.
Exactly. I couldn't defend killing the apostates. I couldn't defend non-Muslims being discriminated. I couldn't defend stoning, for example. Stoning was horrible.
Yes.
My consciousness wouldn't allow it, and I couldn't lie. I couldn't just go to the non-Muslim and say, no, there's no such thing as stoning. You find people doing that.
Yeah, so you couldn't do taqiyya.
I couldn't do the taqiyya thing, like some Muslims do. They just say that this is not Islam or something like that.
Yes, I know. I hear that a lot.
Yeah, it's like, and most of the time they're not even consciously lying.
Oh, I think many of them actually think so. Yeah.
Many of them, they haven't studied the sources.
No.
And they get away with it because nobody asks, what do you mean that's not Islam? But this, that, they don't bring up the points.
Yes.
This text says this, the Hadith, the Quran, whatever. They don't bring up. They just leave them like that. They just, so they get away with it.
Yes.
You find some cute Muslim girl, she looks lovely with a scarf, and she says, no, that's not Islam. Islam is peace.
Muhammad was a feminist.
Exactly.
All of these things.
And then the journalists would just, okay, they wouldn't ask any hard questions.
No.
Follow-up questions. But with me, when I did the research, for example, about stoning, I found that stoning really is the,
Yes.
There's no way to get around it.
Mm.
So the Prophet Muhammad, especially in Sufism, you have all this, the love of Muhammad is central in Sufism. We sing all these hymns about Muhammad, how great he was. He was a miracle worker. He was filled with compassion, with love. Yes. You just praise him, you put him almost at the level of God himself, in many,
Yes.
But then I really couldn't,
You couldn't get it to
fit together,
right.
That image of Muhammad as this great man, and then him, killing somebody with stones,
yes.
Throwing stones at somebody.
Yes.
Because there is even the Hadith very explicit, narrations.
Yes.
For example, you have a couple. And they are trying, and he's stoning them, slowly to death, throwing stones at them. And I couldn't really, I felt disgust for such a person. So I didn't feel comfortable, to praise Muhammad,
Exactly.
As you expect to do at the mosque. Whenever you pray, you have to praise Muhammad.
Right.
I couldn't really, in my heart, praise Muhammad when I knew that we're supposed to believe that he did those things. That's in the books, in the Hadith books, stoning.
Yes.
So,
and
I couldn't go to the non-Muslims and say, no, that's not there, because I wanted to be true to myself and to them. And you can avoid the subject. That's what people do.
Yes.
You try to deflect.
Yes.
You talk about something else.
Yes.
So you find many Muslim, leaders, representatives, apologetics. They try to avoid the questions.
Yes.
They say Islamophobia.
Yes.
For example, if you say that Muhammad did this, they will say they will say the Crusaders did that.
Yes.
They will try. What about?
Yes. The whataboutism.
Exactly. Or they will say that question is Islamophobic.
Yes.
Or they will say that doesn't concern me. I'm here in Sweden. I just want to talk about what's happening here. I don't want to talk about what's happening over there.
Yes.
Or they will say that that's not the only interpretation. The other interpretations,
right.
And then they will just leave it there. They won't get into which interpretation is more reasonable, which is more supported by evidence.
Right.
I can interpret the Quran however I want. Yeah. I could say that when I can say that, for example. Whatever, I can't really find a good example now, but imagination sets the boundaries.
Yes.
You can interpret whatever you want, but the question is which interpretation is more supported.
Yes.
By them is which is more reasonable, which will I be able to convince the Muslims.
Yes.
If I go to the mosque now and preach and I say that the Quran really says that there are two gods. Not one, because, for example, the Quran uses the plural.
Right.
And I just say we. Right. When God is speaking of Himself, He's saying we.
Ah.
So I can say that the Quran says we, so that means that there are at least two. But I won't be able to convince anybody.
No.
That's just taken out of context. It's completely,
Yes.
It's completely stupid. So it's the same as saying that Muhammad was a feminist. Muhammad was talking about, you know, that men and women are equal, they have the same rights and such stuff. That's not there.
No.
That's contradicted by the texts.
Yes.
So that's just a way of, you know, avoiding the question when you say that there are several interpretations. They're saying that, for example, no, you have different interpretations. You have some scholars saying that girls should inherit half of the boys, the sons,
Yes.
and you have some saying that they should inherit the same.
Yes.
But they're not telling that there are you know, there's 99.9% saying that the girls should inherit
Yes.
half,
Yes, and there's
and
a small minority.
0.000 some tiny minority which says that they should inherit. So they're not telling you which interpretation is more popular,
Yes.
which is more supported by the evidence. So they're just throwing out something like, we have different views, we have different interpretations. You have an essentialistic concept of religion.
Right.
They're telling you that you are like Bin Laden. You're saying that Islam means this.
Yes.
Islam is like that.
Yes.
There are different interpretations, and they're not telling you which interpretation they are following and why.
No. No.
So it's a dishonesty.
Yes.
It's not straight out lying, but it's almost.
Yes.
You know, it's almost lying. So, you know, so it's this sort of, you know, reflection, discussing, studying, trying to answer questions, which finally, you know, led to me leaving Islam. And that was not really easy, because when I left Islam, before I tried to be within the boundaries of Islam.
Yes.
To still call me a Muslim, but be very, you know, liberal in my views.
Yes.
But that wasn't really honest.
No.
So when I finally, you know, took the step and you know, announced that I'm not a Muslim anymore, that was a big step, because that's then my family got, you know, split.
Yes.
So we couldn't stay together, and I had to make a decision. I had to choose: am I with the Muslims or with the non-Muslims? You can't be both, so to speak. If you want to remain within the Muslim community, to be considered a Muslim, then you can't criticize Muhammad, for example. You can't criticize the Quran, the Hadith. Then they will, you know, expel you from the community. You will be considered an apostate.
Yes.
So to speak. Mm.
Yes. I sometimes hear that I shouldn't criticize Islam, at least not as much as I do. And especially as a confessing Christian, that I shouldn't do it because I scare away Muslims from looking into, well, Christianity, or looking into if they should leave Islam. What do you think about this? Should I criticize Islam, or should I be quiet about it and just talk about what I think is good, and just stay away from mentioning things that I think are real problems and that we have to deal with?
I think actually that some Muslims will, you can actually open some eyes by criticizing Islam, because many Muslims, they haven't really looked into the religion that deeply.
No.
So if you raise some points, for example, about stoning,
Yes.
for example, that may lead to some Muslims actually looking into the texts.
Yes.
And they might, they might reconsider their view of Muhammad, for example. So I don't think that you should avoid talking about the subject, but of course you should do it in a factious, polite way.
Yes.
Not and you always to differentiate between Muslims and Islam.
Yes.
Muslims, 99.9% of the world's population are Muslims. They are just born Muslims.
Yes.
If Muhammad came today, he probably wouldn't convince that many people.
No.
Most of the people who are Muslims today, they wouldn't be convinced by Muhammad if he was. So it's a heritage.
Yes.
They were born that way. They haven't really, many Muslims haven't really read the Quran.
No.
Even the Arabic-speaking Muslims, they don't really know what's in the Quran. They don't really understand it. It's few people who do. They're busy with other things.
Yes.
Islam is just a part of their life, of their identity.
Yes.
So it's important to differentiate between the religion and the
people. Yes.
And the people. So you can't really hold them to account, or say that how can you be a Muslim when Muhammad did this and that, because most women don't know. And even if they know, even if you tell them,
yes,
it's very hard, to leave Islam, because it's a part of the family.
Yes.
So they might stay in Islam without believing it.
Yes, because they don't want to become an outcast.
Exactly.
Or maybe even get killed.
Exactly. So that will ruin their lives. They will, maybe that will destroy the relationship between their parents, with their spouses,
yes,
with the kids and so on. So even if you manage to convince a Muslim that Muhammad wasn't really a good model,
right,
moral, he wasn't really a good, role model, and the Quran might not be the word of God and so on.
Right.
They still might stay in Islam because of other
yes
considerations.
Like for instance, I have read in several places now that there are actually at least 2 versions of the Quran, and if I tell this to a practicing Muslim, he will of course object.
Of course, most Muslims don't know about this. I think there are more. I don't really know how many. They are called readings, qira in Arabic.
Right.
I think there are, I don't really remember the number, but there's a few.
Yes.
There are minor variations.
Yes.
But
even the minor variations, if for the sake of argument the Quran would be the perfect word of God, then there could only be one version.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. So that is an important point to create awareness about this.
Yes.
And there's so many points about the Quran not being the exact word of God, because there's so many scientific errors, for example.
Yes.
In
yes.
the
There's
Quran.
a long list of that.
Yes, and there's so many borrowings as well.
Yes.
For example, you have a story of Alexander the Great.
Oh.
In the Quran.
Okay.
He's called Dhul Qarnayn in Arabic. That means the two-horned one.
Okay.
Because Alexander the Great was portrayed on coins as having 2 horns.
Yeah, because he conquered
the East and West.
Yes, more or less all the way from Greece all the way to India.
Exactly. So and that story of Alexander the Great, which is in the Quran, that's almost copied word by word from a Syriac story about Alexander.
Right.
It's called Alexander Romance. So that's copied directly into the Quran. And Muhammad didn't know, or the people writing the Quran, we don't know who wrote the Quran, they didn't know that Alexander was a polytheist. So in the Quran he's portrayed as a monotheist, as a righteous person, on the straight path and so on, a sort of a proto-Muslim.
Very interesting.
So Muhammad sort of, or the authors of the Quran, they sort of, they portray him as a good example of how you should be as a believer.
Yes.
And he was in fact a polytheist. He worshipped, the ancient.
Yes, he worshipped the Greek gods.
The Greek gods.
They had a whole gallery of them.
Exactly. So, but they didn't know about it. Muhammad didn't know about that. So that's one of them. There's so many mistakes in the Quran and so many borrowings from other sources. For example, the stories of paradise in the Quran.
Yes.
Researchers have found that they are in part copied also from Syriac. Hymns.
Yes.
Christian hymns.
Yes.
Even though that Muslims take it more literary.
Yes.
Then the Christian concept of heaven is more spiritual.
Yes.
In the Islamic heaven, you have more sensual pleasures.
Yes.
Yeah. So the Quran has got many weaknesses, which you discover when you study.
So what I can do is point to the facts and tell them to research it for themselves.
Of course, and there's so many people doing it right now. There's so much information out there on the internet, and there's so many Muslims leaving Islam.
Yes.
And so everything is available out there. It's just you have to. You do your research and you try to to spread it around, to make more Muslims discover.
Yes.
And doubt their beliefs.
Yeah. So to finish this, I have one more short question. Have you been following what's been going on in Iran for the last week or so?
Yeah, it looks good. It looks like but you never know, because there have been this sort of protests before.
Yes.
And they were crushed.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that this protest will be successful. I don't think that it will be managed to topple the regime.
Okay.
But I can't be sure.
No.
But eventually it will have to go down.
Yes, because I've understood that many Iranians are pretty secular.
Exactly. So there's discontent, spreading in Iran. For example, you have an Iranian community in Sweden.
Yes.
Which is very critical of Islam.
Yes, many of them are
I think absolute majority.
Yes.
And they are, they would, if a Swede said those things that they're saying,
yes,
they would be Islamophobes and racists.
Oh, I saw what Hanif Bali was tweeting.
Exactly. You see some protesters now in Iran saying no to Islam, no
yes,
to the Quran.
Yes.
So that's quite, how do you say?
That's really interesting.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to say that in Sweden. No to Islam, no to Quran.
Well, you can say it, but
you can say it, but
but you will be labeled a racist.
You'll be labeled a racist.
Or an Islamophobe.
Islamophobe, something like that.
Yes.
Politically incorrect.
Yes.
And dissident.
It creates a lot of problems for you.
Of course.
Well, we do it anyway because we can't keep our mouths shut. But
exactly. I think Iranians have an advantage compared to, for example, in Saudi Arabia, because Iranians are more educated.
Yes.
And then they also have a very strong, culture, right, cultural identity.
Yeah, they still have some of their old Persian
exactly,
festivities.
Exactly. So they wouldn't, if they leave Islam, if a Persian person, an Iranian, leaves Islam,
he can still celebrate Nowruz, for instance.
So he will still be a part of the Persian or the Iranian culture and community.
Yes.
So he wouldn't be completely, alone.
Exactly.
Islam is just a part of their identity.
Yes.
While, for example, in Saudi Arabia, Islam is a very large part of their identity. Almost all of they don't have any other festivals.
No.
They just have the Islamic ones.
Yes.
Like Ramadan and the 2 Eids, the holidays, Islamic holidays. So they don't have, they don't have like 2 sets of,
right,
festivals.
No.
An Arab and an Islamic.
No, they only have the Islamic
They
ones.
just want the Islamic one. So if they leave that one, they will have to choose another culture, become Western or something like
yes.
that. but
yes, they did, yes.
Yeah, but for example, Iranians and Kurds, they have very strong cultural identity.
Yes.
If they leave Islam, they will still have the sense of community and belonging.
They still have their culture.
Exactly, and they can still celebrate their festivals and that sort of things.
Yes.
So that's an advantage that the Iranians have.
Yes.
And it's a very, very well-educated population, and eventually I think that this regime will have to, to go. But I'm not sure if this is the.
No, it might take.
It might take a few more years.
Yes. Well, okay. Unless you have something else to add.
It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Yes, thank you very much for participating.
And I wish you all the best in the future with your channel.
Oh, thank you. And I wish you all the best with all the things you are doing too.
Thank you. I'm also a YouTuber, but in Swedish.
Yes, I could link to some of your work in the description box to this video.
Thanks.
Yes, so that's really all we got right now. I would like to thank everyone who supports this channel, one way or the other, or my work in general. And if you like what I do, if you think what I do is important, well, please consider sending $1 or 2 or 10. That's always greatly appreciated. So, until next time, have a nice day, God bless, and Merry Christmas.